It's just so difficult, to witness this moment where you should be so happy, then so much pain that you can't even handle.
We need to be very careful about how to handle the next couple of years in order for our children, for the next generations, to be able to live in democratic Syria.
I'm so happy that he was not killed there, that he wasn't turned into a hero, that he left his entire people alone, even the people who believe that he's like God, and he's someone who would fight for them.
How do you think Syrians can stop this turning to more rage and more anger, and for that to take over? Hello and welcome to the Forecast. It has been a tumultuous weekend in Syria. The regime has fallen and people are trying to work out what happens next. And of course, the ramifications and the significance of what is happening there is constantly coming into view. And people are realizing that this rolls on into so many other parts of the Middle East, of this country. It affects everywhere. Now, joining me today to discuss what is happening and how people feel about it, the filmmaker Waad Al-Kateab, long associated with Channel 4 News, who reported from Aleppo during her years there with her husband, living in the last hospitals that were functioning in East Aleppo as the regime forces came down and took over eventually in 2016. She now lives in Britain. And also Mazen Gharibah, who is from the British Syrian Consortium, which is a sort of lobby group of British Syrians and is also a researcher at the LSE. Thank you both for joining us. Let's just try and work out how people feel first. I mean, Waad, we spoke on Friday and you were sort of in shock then. Now the regime is gone. What's it been like for you watching this?
We've been living the last 13 years waiting for this moment. And when it did happen, I think, maybe because of the trauma that we carry, maybe because of the pain, maybe because of the people we lost, maybe because we nearly had a, kind of this thought that this life can't be fair. It can't, justice is not a real word, or, hope is just something we hold on into, but it's not going to be real any day. However, all of this turned to reality, and we've witnessed as Syrian people this moment. We thought that, or we feel this is a dream, and, everything we've been through with what's going on. And I think what I just came to realize, which is, no, this is not a dream. This is the reality. And what we've been through was a nightmare. And this is how life should be. It shouldn't never be like how we were living before.
I mean, I remember meeting you in Turkey just after you had come out of Aleppo. And you said then that you will go back to Aleppo. But I didn't really think you believed it. Did you?
I don't know how to explain this. I'm living for that moment. Although I did thought in so many times this will never happen. I did thought in so many times I am holding on to fake hope just for me to survive this moment. And this moment wasn't just getting out of Aleppo in that situation where we were forcibly displaced, but also every single day here in the UK. Life here is amazing. It's lovely. Okay, I'm safe. I am with my kids and things seems, for the outside, it's good. But I have to drag myself every single day from bed, believing that, no, our life was not for nothing. Everyone we lost was not for nothing. Also, kind of there's this phrase which come out after, for some of us, we dare to dream, we won't regret dignity. So many people told me, I am romantic. I am, just kind of, my trauma is affecting my head and I'm just living into that fantasy world of how life should be because the reality is not like this. I believe that at some time. I'm never give up imagining or thinking, that maybe not me, even my daughters would go and be there and Assad would be fallen. And he is fallen now.
Mazen, what's it been like for you the last couple of days?
Pretty much like Waad's, and like all Syrians I know, absolute joy and happiness, a disbelief that this actually happens, that we Syrians finally are free of the Assad's brutal regime after 54 years of the Assad's family. This is an absolute joy. That's something we never thought is going to happen during our lifetime. I gave up, to be honest, I gave up hope about the fall of Assad 5 years ago. Basically, okay, Assad will stay. Everyone is normalizing Assad now, and so we have to deal with him. And probably Assad Jr. will be will rule over Syria afterwards. But now it happens. It's like a dream. I remember when it happened, actually, I called Waad. It's like, okay, is this really happening? It's like, guys, okay, so this is happening. But underneath that overwhelming feeling of joy and relief, of course, there is this range of mixed feelings, well, cautious optimism about what's going to happen next. It's also a sense of uncertainty. What's the future is going to bring. So far, we've seen causative practices by the opposition forces all over the country, which is great, which is reassuring for many, many people. But at the same time, there are a lot of other people who are still kind of finding it difficult to be reassured by practices of positive practices. They're also traumatized by previous experiences during the armed conflict. So people are really hopeful, hoping that a political negotiation will start immediately. A civilian transitional governing body will be there. A new constitution that guarantees the rights and dignity of all Syrians from all religion, sects, ethnicities, men and women. But when we talk, what's different now is that when we used to say these things 5 years ago, people were dismissive. So yeah, this is just, you're dreaming. This is just the civil society being civil society. But now it's people are now believing it. So, okay, so this could actually.
But the question is, that political transition, it needs to happen very quickly, doesn't it? I mean, because if it doesn't, then comes the danger of what we've seen before in countries like Libya and Iraq, where the fighting begins between the inheritors. So how do you think this can actually be pushed forward fast?
Okay, so this is exactly what needs to be done. So that's why all of us Syrians, kind of activists and civil society activists, and putting pressure on all international actors, international players, to start immediately to restart the Geneva process, the UN-backed Geneva process, according to the UN Security Council 2254, which is kind of the entry point or the roadmap for the political transition in Syria. We have a Security Council resolution. There is the Geneva process that needs to be activated immediately because, as you said, interim military and government arrangements could impose certain stability in the short term, but there are no guarantees that they will be stable at a longer term unless a political process will start immediately. And that's what the special envoy, the UN special envoy Guy Pedersen, has been saying. And this is what the UK, the US, the EU should also be saying, and should also be pressuring all other kind of parties, including Arab states, Russia, to be really involved this time in a meaningful discussions and in meaningful negotiations. Because now the Assad is gone, so now we have our country back. There are absolutely no roadblocks to start the political process again.
But how realistic do you think this is? Because I mean, Waad, if you think about what happened over the last few years, the outside world effectively abandoned Syria, so if you now want the outside world to get involved in Syria's future, do you think it's going to?
Whatever we think, I think as Syrians, they will get involved, and they will get involved based on their agendas, based on their benefits. What we really want to focus on, and this is, I think, exactly what Mazen is trying to say, is like we need to be able to immediately, decide where and how. As we are celebrating this like amazing news, like Bashar al-Assad arrived in Russia and they get asylum there. Israel was marching into like southern of Syria. So there's no really time. And what's really like sad, I think, it's at this moment where we should just celebrate and grieve this pain and this amazing achievement as Syrian people. We still, as we speak, there is people under the ground in Syria. There's people, prisoners, political prisoners who we are desperately trying to get out, to know where are they. There's thousands of families who are, trying just to understand where are they, what's going on. I don't know how can we handle all of this. I don't know how can we deal with all of this.
I think people are still getting to grips here with the scale of what has happened and what is still to be revealed about what happened under the regime, and the lives that were ruined, and the people who were in prison, and the people who were killed, and the people who disappeared. I mean, can you give me a sense of the conversations that are going on amongst your friends? And
I mean, the moment the regime falls, we just started calling each other. And yeah, Mazen was one of the early one I was jumping on the phone with. People who I haven't spoke with like for years, my own family, my aunties, my uncle who are in a small town called Masyaf. It's a very sensitive area toward the regime and what's going on around there. So I've never spoke to them. I've never managed, to say hi because I am Waad Al-Kateab in their perspective, which is very scary and very risky to them. It was the first time, and so many people over these phones, they were saying this, like, we've never spoke, like freely. We've never managed to just look into each other's eyes and be happy and all of this. And that was so real. That was so, I think, painful as well. We, until now, I jump dance and sing out loud and get crazy and happy. And then 2 seconds later, I can cry my eyes out. It's just so many really difficult emotions. And even this, it's the first time I'm happy about it. I need to let it out. I need just to be able to breathe. However, all of this is one thing. And maybe 1 hour after we got confirmation about the news, I called one of my friends, Wafa Mustafa. She's a Syrian activist in Berlin. Her father was disappeared like 13 years ago. And I can tell you, she's coming from a different planet. It's just so difficult, to witness this moment where you should be so happy. Then so much pain that you can't even handle this. You don't know will her father get out or not. And I'm talking about Wafa because she's my best friend, but like all of us, we know maybe every Syrian house, there's someone like this. My auntie, she lost her, my cousin was also arrested and he was killed like 6-7 years ago. And she didn't see the body. She just had, his paperwork and that he's dead, and they gave her certificate. It was also under torture. And we are still looking for him now. There's a chance, there's hope. And just so many people like this. We're so, yes, over the moon, but in a very painful way.
Mazen, I know you've got to go in a minute. So do you want to have a last word and on this, and then I'll let you go.
No, I just want to say that's as Waad said, that we dared to dream, and our dream came a reality now. The moment that's actually will stay forever with me is that when my father, who still lives in Homs, he called me crying after they removed the al-Assad statue, which was at the corner of their house. For him, that was the moment of the regime fall, because he told me for 54 years I have to pass through that al-Assad statue, knowing that Assad's family are suffocating us, and now that's gone. And he said, I thought I'm gonna die under Assad's rule, and now I'm not. So for me, that's worth fighting for. That's the moment that's worth fighting for, and I'm hoping that we will stay together as Syrians in order to steer Syria into a better future now, because the situation is great, but it's also very, very, very sensitive. So we need to be very careful about how to handle the next couple of years in order for our children, for the next generations, to be able to live in democratic Syria. But thank you for having me.
Mazen, I'll let you go because I know you've got to run. But Waad, let me continue with you. Thank you, Mazen. When you describe the emotions that you're going through, and I'm sure everyone is going through the same, how do you think Syrians can stop this turning to more rage and more anger, and for that to take over?
I think there's really, really weird situation where, to be honest, like even my own revenge, my own rage, my own kind of hate, toward everything we've been through, toward individuals who I know they helped, like the regime, to point on us, to talk about us, to spread misinformation about us. And this was at the time when we were getting out of Aleppo. It's just all for me gone. I don't really care about any of this. Even my own revenge to Assad today, I do feel like I don't really care. I'm so happy that he was not killed there, that he wasn't turned into a hero, that he left his entire people alone, even the people who believe that he's like God, and he's someone who would fight for them. I think where we are now, it's the best scenario ever. And whether we intentionally, led to this or whatever, I do believe that what these 13 days or like 11 days, 12 days have showed us that we do love each other, that as Syrian people, we are able to live with each other without fear. We are able to respect each other. And, people all we're talking about HTS and these fighters, which we don't know who they are. We don't know who we're parts from. What they just showed on the ground today, like, it's so like unbelievable even for us. I lived in Aleppo where part of these groups were there before HTS was even established. Part of the reasons why I didn't come back to Syria, to Idlib, to live there was them. But yet, so many things changed. And what we're seeing in places where there's like Alawi or Christian or any kind of minority of people, it's just so impressive. And I don't know why. I'm still trying to understand how did this change and how this worked. But can you imagine that 13 years of all these war crimes that we've witnessed, with people fighting each other, with people like... And again, I think it turns back to the same point, which I'm always trying to make. This was not a civil war. It's not Syrian killing each other. It's Syrians fighting for their rights. It's a government who's like criminal and evil. And when you see people now, like with everything's going on the ground today, like people just desperately want to live peacefully. And we are taking this opportunity. I think, yes, the focus now should be on a transitional power and government. We need to take it step by step. This country was drawn into like whole war for years. So many agendas, so many different countries got involved. Like, it just, it's with very big corruption over years. People used to that in their own, work and life and families. So there's a lot to be done. But we just it's kind of part of the healing. I don't know how to explain this.
I think people are also trying to understand, that HTS ran Idlib and they had institutions in Idlib. But for many people, I mean, including yourself, they were quite a fearsome organization. But that was during the conflict. And I suppose, the hope is that now changes. And they are saying things that are very conciliatory and moderate, and they're talking about, political process and building institutions. From your understanding of how they ran Idlib, I mean, can you give us any sense of, how competent it was, or how,
Yeah, I think what we heard from people in Idlib until today, because when we were displaced out of Aleppo, this is where everyone kind of settled at the end. It was definitely not this free Syria that we want, for sure. And there's no, question about that. But at the same time, there was space for people to protest against that. And we've witnessed so many activists who were leading protests against al-Julani, Ahmed Shara, who's now like the head of HTS. And at the same time, like we lived under bombing. Our entire city were under bombing by our own president. Why do you think I should fear someone who are extreme in their thinking when I'm fighting someone like Bashar al-Assad, who's very liberal, very modern, but like there's no even comparing for us, you know, like, yes, they are listed as a terrorist group, but how did that also could happen? And Bashar al-Assad is not listed under terrorist group. Like, this can't make any sense. Yes, they are not the Syria that we are fighting for, but we still can fight against them if they are not, you know, like, right. And today, more than ever, I think we should learn from everything we've been through. We should look forward. But what's really, for me, assuring, or I feel like more, I don't know, hopeful in that the attitude on the ground, people in Aleppo, in Hama, in Damascus today, they are telling us that these statements are true on the ground. And this is what we hope. At the end of the day, you know, this is one opportunity we have today. We have to take it. We have to fight for it. We have to protect it. And this is, I think, what everyone believes. When the whole international community let us down, you know, like, this is where we are today. And this is because of them as well. So let's hope and let's try. We have so much work to do.
When you talk about the past crimes of the Assad regime, what do you think needs to happen to cement that in history? You know, do you need some sort of truth and reconciliation process, commission? Should it be Syrian? Should it be international? You know, how do you make sure that the truth is written down and captured and recognized, and doesn't sort of fester and turn into, you know, something terrible?
I think it was faster and was turning into something terrible before Assad was gone, because we were witnessing normalization with countries where they were just saying, yeah, it doesn't matter what happened. We have, like, he's the only option we have. However, I think for all of us today, first thing, we did document so many things happening. It was me in Aleppo in one hospital, but there was thousands of activists and people who dedicated their life for this kind of documentation. And because we were thinking and we were feeling that the end would not be as we wanted, the documentation became more urgent and more important work. So we really hope to rely on that a lot. But also, I think in the next 1 to 10 years, I don't know how long this would take, like, justice should take a shape. And I don't know exactly how does this shape would be, but I think the most revenge and the most, you know, like, justice we can all get is to get the country into a better place today. That's, I think, you know, when we really will be won over Assad, over everything he believed in, over everything his system, you know, built in Syria. I'm sure that so many people would maybe disagree with me on this. I don't know if I will feel like this tomorrow, but, you know, today I'm just, I don't know, there's a whole, like, I don't know how to explain this, really. It's still so raw and so new and so painful at the same time. But we're so happy.
It's just the beginning, isn't it? And it's extraordinary to see it. Excuse me. It's extraordinary to see it on your face. So thank you so much for talking to us today. I'm sure you've probably had no sleep for days. But we'll come back, I'm sure, and speak again. Before we go, obviously people can catch up with your coverage of Aleppo on the Channel 4 News website. How can people see For Sama, the documentary that you made? So
many of the reports I've worked with on Channel 4 News, on a website called Inside Aleppo. It's on Channel 4 News website. And we have, on all four, they can watch For Sama. It's free in the UK, available for all. Also, they can follow the action, the impact campaign that we've established since For Sama was out. It's called Action for Sama.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching. That was The Forecast. We'll be back very soon. Bye-bye.